Finally, I can make the video that I wanted to first release, and that is the review and the full details of both of these new flagships here from POCO. So we have the F7 Pro with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, the F7 Ultra with the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and the Ultra branding. Well, does this phone actually live up to that? Well, we'll find out in this comparison/review. I'll be going over their differences, and I'll tell you what I think about these, having tested and used them, and whether or not you should go for this model, the F7 Pro, or should you go for the Ultra. Big thumbs up for Xiaomi for including this. You get the charging cable, you charge, it's either 90 watts with the F7 Pro or 120 with the F7 Ultra. You get this, which contains some paperwork, SIM tray tool, which you don't see, it's inside there, and this silicone case. Now, the silicone case fits it perfectly, it's in this gray, and that's what you get for both of the phones. All of that included, which is fantastic considering many brands now are removing this, including Xiaomi themselves with the Xiaomi 15 series. Thickness and weight, there is a difference. The Ultra is slightly thicker. You can see the back of it is curved where it's flat with the Pro, and that's a very small difference in the thickness. So the Pro on the left here is 8.12 millimeters of thickness versus 8.39. Do you notice that difference? No, I mean, that's not much at all. So I'll try and make this as clear as possible. They're very similar phones, but there are key differences, important differences. So right now, chipset. F7 Pro has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. This has the Snapdragon 8 Elite. And of course, in synthetic benchmarks, it is better. It's got a lot better GPU and CPU performance, but in real-world use, you're barely going to notice that difference. And I do challenge people to actually see that difference. When using both of them, I can't really tell, especially in the UI, and even in gaming, you don't really notice. So the battery capacity, this is another one that is a huge difference, doesn't really make any sense at all. So we have 6,000 milliamp hours in the cheaper F7 Pro, the non-Ultra version, and with the Ultra, it's 5,300 milliamp hours, and that's a massive difference. And how much does that make, that difference in real-world use? Well, I'll let you know later on in the video, but a bit of a spoiler, probably about 40 to an hour more of on-screen time with this model right here, the F7 Pro. Now, cameras, looking at the back, there is a difference. The modules look the same, but the Ultra has a 2.5 times optical zoom camera, 60 millimeters. Now, that's 50 megapixels. All of the cameras on the rear here, 50 megapixels, and the ultra wide is an important one, 50 megapixels. With the F7 Pro, I don't even know why it's called a Pro model, to be honest, but it's got an 8 megapixel ultra wide. Ooh, yeah, and you'll see later on, it's not really that good at all. And then we have the 50 megapixel main, which is the same as the Ultra camera. This is quite good, f1.6, and it has optical image stabilization with electronic, and you can shoot 8K, but only at 24 frames per second. 4K 60, yes, is on board there. Now, you don't get wireless charging with the Pro version, no. And the Type-C ports down the bottom here, there is an important difference between them. In fact, no, there isn't, sorry. They're both not supporting video out, according to all of the adapters that I do have, and all of my HDMI to Type-C cables. Nothing seems to work, works with other phones, but none of these are supporting video out. That's disappointing. Now, the SIM trays, they take 2 nano SIMs, no micro SD support, no 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. That's long gone. We already knew this coming into this video, but you probably didn't know eSIM support at the time of this video. Non-existent. Can't find it in the settings. No option. No eSIM support. Metal frames around the outside. Very good build. Metal buttons to them. You can see the antenna lines. And with this one, the Ultra, you get the 120 watt hypercharging. You get only the 90 with the other. And you get wireless 50 watt charging too, which is great to have. And another reason to go for the Ultra model. Other things to note is they both have ultrasonic fingerprint readers, and they work very well. They do not fail, so much better than optical, and I'm all for this move, and I hope from here on now, with all the POCO phones, if they can do it, I don't know if it's possible within the more cheaper models, to have ultrasonic and not optical, because it's just so much better, so much quicker, so much accurate. You can literally just tap and it unlocks, and you won't run into problems. So that is great. Now the screens, they are identical, both the same. We are looking at here
1440p display screens. Well, Quad HD Plus, because it's 3200 by 1440 with the screens, 120 hertz, and they are very smooth. HyperOS based on Android 15 with them both. Slightly different firmware versions between them. That's to be expected with the slightly different hardware when it comes to mainly just the cameras, but of course also the chipset. And speaking of the cameras, the front-facing cameras here, the little cutout, the punch here, 32 megapixels here versus 20, really not much of a difference at all. And for video performance, sadly, both of them do not, at the time of this video, support 4K video. You can see when I jump into video right now that they are 1080p only for front-facing video, and that is downright disappointing. We get 60 frames per second, but where's 4K? I mean, they do have that with their Xiaomi flagships. Are we going backwards here? It seems we kind of am. With some things we are. I'm going backwards too as well, it seems. So there we have brilliant screens, flat. This is the best thing about them. Really nice build quality with that metal frame. The hardware is certainly there. Software-wise, it's okay. Optimized both of them. I don't see any difference between the speed unless I look at synthetic benchmarks, which we'll do now. I do apologize if you have seen this before in my second video, but do blame Xiaomi for that one. Well, POCO, because they wanted 3 embargoes for these two phones here, which I think is just a little on the silly side. So you get more pre-installed bloatware with the cheaper version. Why they've done this, POCO, I don't know, but you get more pre-installed games. It's not a big thing, of course. You can just go in and uninstall that, but they make deals with these companies to have the apps pre-installed. Even though you're paying the full price for them, they still like to do that. And I'm not someone that's agreeing with that, but hey, if it brings the price down, then maybe it's all right, and we just uninstall what you don't use, of course. So Antutu shows us that there is a difference, that obviously we know that a Snapdragon 8 Elite is going to be faster than the last gen, Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. But here, synthetic benchmarks show, whoa, hey, over 500,000 points difference. That must be so noticeable. Well, it isn't. It really isn't that noticeable. When you're using both of these, they both run the UI at 120 frames per second, and I'm not noticing any slowdown or difference. Even though this model's RAM caps out at 12 gigabytes, this one you get with 16 with the top-end version, 512 gigabytes of storage. And it looks like both of the models here do not have a terabyte option. No, seems that's not going to come. It just tops out at 512. And of course, you can't expand upon that. Storage speeds are very, very similar, and they're always going to vary from unit to unit. So don't focus too much on this, even though in some areas the cheaper model did come out a little bit faster, but it's just down to that storage. So when we look at Geekbench 6, by the way, I have that result here. Hang on. I've got a bit of a mess. I didn't take a screenshot of that one properly. You'll see it right here. They are, well, there's a difference on the multi-core score. That's the only big one, but single core, I mean, 100 points, really not that far off. 106 points. That's not something that you are again going to notice at all when you are using this device normally and just not running these kind of benchmarks. OpenGL score, OpenCL should I say, score here. Minor little difference there, not much. But the big one for me is battery life. So we've got 6,000 milliamp hours versus 5,300 on the more expensive so-called Ultra model. It's not, if you ask me. It has a smaller battery. It doesn't make any sense at all, but for some reason in POCO's logic, it does. That the more expensive model has a smaller battery, and you can see the difference is 40 minutes. 40 minutes of this benchmark. Real world, probably up to about an hour's difference of on-screen time, and that's huge. That is massive. So if you value your battery life, you don't care so much about ultra-wide photos or zoom photos, this is your phone, I think, to go for. And then you'll see here, charge time, really not much in it. So I started, okay, 16% here and 18, but at these low battery percentages, that doesn't really make too much of a difference. After both of them at 25 minutes, we got to 91% on both of them. Oh, okay. It's interesting. And then to fully charge, the Ultra model took 30 minutes at 120 watts. with the smaller battery, of course. Remember, that's helping it. And then 33 minutes to charge the larger battery, so only 3 minutes more, yet it has 7,000 milliamp hours more. So it just goes to show you that having 30 watts more charging speed and a smaller battery doesn't really, or should I say a larger battery, doesn't really make that much of a difference there. So it's, again, I would not base my decision on the charging speed, but focus it heavily on the battery life if that is what is important to you. And I think in a phone, that should be. So the screens are fantastic. Charging time on both is very good. And both the UIs do run very, very quick. The only thing I can criticize really with it is where is the eSIM support POCO? It should be there. Come on, it's 2025. Calls on them seem to be just fine like any other flagship. The haptics you get on the F7 Pro and Ultra, a nice little burst, but I still don't think this is anywhere close to what the POCO F2 has. The POCO F2 haptics, still a very strong burst, really good, and I still rate this phone as having one of the best haptics motors ever. And that's why I've kept this phone too, because, well, it's actually the Redmi K30 Zoom, but it's basically the F2 right there. And the F2 Pro, very good phones. I think that's when they were at their absolute best with the hardware, and that haptics still hasn't been beat, which is a disappointment really in the newer phones that it's not any better. But let's get on now to YouTube. One of my videos here, and we have a quick listen to the audio. The bass out of the speakers is okay. It's minimal, but as you hear from my sample that I'll play, the loudspeaker top and bottom there, they're all right. I'd rate it as a 7 out of 10. So with gaming performance, both of them are almost identical. And I say almost, so you do notice that with the Snapdragon 8 Elite, it has less frame dips, and the average frames per second does seem to be marginally better. But honestly, the difference, is it worth that extra money? If you game a lot and you really must have the absolute best performance in the latest and greatest chipset, yeah, by all means get it. However, I think most people will be quite happy with what the F7 offers with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, because it really does offer very, very similar kind of performance. And I don't think most people, apart from the most avid gamers, are going to notice that kind of difference there at all. This question did come up a few times, and that is the thermals on them. And the hotter chipset is the Snapdragon 8 Elite. This is no surprise to me at all, having tested out quite a few of them now. It's a very hot chip. And you can see with the same Antutu test, this went up 17.9 degrees, the F7 Pro, and 22.5 degrees, the F7 Ultra. So that's quite a bit of a difference there in the temperatures. Now, when gaming for long periods, you do feel the heat around this part here, mostly around the frame. They don't get crazy hot, both of them, but I do clearly feel that, as we're seeing with those results there, that the Ultra model definitely runs quite a bit hotter, and both of them do, of course, throttle. The phone does have Wi-Fi calls, there's NFC too, and 5G working just fine for me here in Spain. Good signal strength throughout the area that I live in, but it is a fake 5G. I do a very quick speed test here, and you'll see what I mean. They're using the 5G frequencies, but they don't actually have the proper infrastructure, because it normally caps out at about what it is now, 50 on all other phones too. So that is no real issue. The upload speed will be, as you'll see, about the same. In fact, quite a bit slower there. Not amazing, but that's what I get with any other flagship phone. Over to our cameras now with the POCO F7 Pro and F7 Ultra. So both of them, the video quality seems to be almost identical. I can't really tell a difference. Right now I'm using the F7 Pro, and the audio you're hearing is of course recorded on the device, and it's not too bad if there isn't any wind, but you'll hear more of that later when I focus on the rear cameras. So we get 1080p only, no 4K here, and it looks a little bit overexposed, but I'll swap over now to the Ultra model and see if there's a difference in the exposure at least. It does look like the Ultra here is exposing this shot better. So if you want slightly better front-facing video, I think the Ultra is marginally better. So you can't shoot 4K with the ultra-wide camera on the F7 Ultra or the F7 Pro. It makes no sense with the Ultra not being able to do it. After all, we've got that 50 megapixel sensor. So we've got a preset here which is 2 times digital zoom. And I can take it up to the 2.5 times optical. You do see that change over. And this is 5 times preset looking at the Castle of Denia. Now I find that the stability very good. Audio quality is good, but there's a bit of a breeze at the moment. Now just walk ahead a little to demonstrate that stability, which is optical and electronic image stabilization. And overall, not bad. But is this ultra quality? Yeah, I really don't think it is. Ultra wide now, this is only 1080p as I mentioned, and it's exactly the same on both of the models, the quality more or less. The Ultra doesn't really seem to have that much better the footage when it comes to ultra wide video. It does have electronic image stabilization, which works well as you can see. And finally a bit of a break in the wind, but it's picking up again. And yes, we do have a bit of wind noise. Looking at stills, selfie, portraits, very similar, but the Ultra photos tend to be a bit warmer. This is now the Pro model, which is slightly cooler, but there's not much in it. I've discovered with the portrait photos that they are very similar, just slight differences in the tone. Normally a bit warmer with the Ultra model, and of course if you need to zoom in, well, it's going to be a bit better for those portrait photos with the F7 Ultra. Because they have the same main camera, I did find that indoor shots, if you've got subjects that tend to move, like cats, can often look a bit blurred due to the shutter rate. Super macro and general outdoor shots with the main cameras do look really good on both of them. 2 times digital zoom on the Pro does look excellent and gives us good results. However, the 2.5 times optical, which is 60mm equivalent, looks much better with the Ultra model. And no match the Ultra against the Pro when you do apply 5 times digital zoom like this example. Then the ultra wide, so the difference between 8 megapixels and 50 is obvious. However, I find that both of them aren't amazing. You'll see when I zoom in, this is now 200% crop, that on the right, that's the Ultra version, 50 megapixels. There's a lot more noise, a bit of over sharpening, but yes, some more detail. Zooming out again, it's the sky that does have a little bit more details, the different shades of those clouds. So yes, the Ultra has the better ultra wide, but not by much. Low light, they are really the same with the same sensor for the main cameras, f1.6, that's on the Pro and the Ultra. Now, when I use the zoom camera with the Ultra, that's on the right here. You can see that it gets a lot more details in the darker areas. Like, look at that guy's hood. There's just in the middle, at the bottom, and we see the darkness to it, the dark background processed differently compared to the Pro model. There's not that much in it because what I did is I used the main camera of the Pro and zoomed them at 2.5 times, so they're both the same. So you can see side by side, 2.5 times optical, 2.5 times digital zoom. There is a bit of a difference. In general, both phones have decent low light performance. There is a bit of a tendency to overexpose, I did notice, with the low light stuff, so I would just notch down that exposure a little bit.
So it boils down really to, if battery life is the most important thing for you, and you still want decent gaming performance, and you don't care too much about ultra-wide or zoom cameras, get the F7 Pro. That would be my choice. And you're also going to save a little bit of money. Now, they're both fantastic value for money, very good. And of course, if you want the absolute latest and greatest chipset, the absolute top performance, you go for the F7 Ultra. However, it doesn't make any sense at all, but it's got the smaller battery. However, the faster charging, which is 120 watts versus 90 watts, is only 3 minutes faster. That's in my testing, and that really doesn't make it worth it. But with this model, yes, you get a better zoom camera, you have the better ultra wide, and both of them missing out on 4K with the front-facing cameras. What on earth is going on there? And why no Type-C video out from both of them either? That's a bit of a shock, and the eSIM support, that really should be there too. Now, I hope that with some software updates, they can add eSIM support, they can add 4K to the front-facing cameras. However, the video out, I don't think we're going to get that. They probably want you to go and get the Xiaomi 15 series for the video out there. And finally, I have to say it, that this is not an Ultra model. I'm sorry, it's not to me, maybe it is to you, But an Ultra model would have the video out, it would have eSIM support, it would also have a more impressive zoom camera. I feel like they should have kept what they normally do and have this model as the F7, and then this as the F7 Pro. Simply leave it at that, it makes more sense. But now calling the non-Pro a Pro, and what isn't an Ultra, yeah, that's not the wisest move there, Xiaomi. But anyway, I understand why you do it, it's all for marketing. But thank you so much for watching this review and comparison of the two new POCO F7 phones.